Good morning, everybody. Firstly, let me welcome you all to our second webinar for our Climate Action Funding Supports. And this particular webinar is focused on companies in the manufacturing sector and industry. My name is Aidan McKenna. I'm the manager of the Climate Enterprise Action Fund, and I'm also a regional director for the Border region for Enterprise Ireland. As I'm sure everyone is well aware, the government has made clear our national commitment to achieve a 51% reduction in emissions by 2030 and to have a net zero carbon economy by 2050. For many businesses, this will mean challenging decisions, significant investment, and an absolute commitment by leadership and shareholders to achieve this goal. While more and more businesses make pledges towards those targets, many have yet to start and to develop meaningful, detailed plans to do just that. Those that have started the journey need assistance to accelerate those plans and the necessary steps to achieve their targets. This webinar is focused on how our supports at Enterprise Ireland can assist companies, particularly manufacturing companies, start and/or accelerate that journey. We have a wonderful panel of speakers and presenters, which I'll get to in a moment. But what I really want you to take away from this morning's webinar is that there are practical steps to start, to accelerate, and to get help to take action now. So before I get to the formal agenda, I want to make this as interactive as possible. There's an opportunity to ask questions to our speakers on our panel. Input your questions in the chat box below, and we'll try and get to as many as possible in the Q&A part of the call. So the agenda for this morning, what we have first up is we have Nick Reynolds, who is a CSR advisor for business in the community in Ireland. Nick will present to us how a growing number of businesses are making low carbon pledges and taking actions to make those pledges a reality. Nick will cover some key insights into this process and journey by businesses that have taken that pledge. Following Nick's presentation, we will have a panel discussion with 3 companies who are clients of Enterprise Ireland who have used our green supports to assist them with their sustainability plans. We have Patrick Bozang, who is CEO of Passive Skills based in Cork. We have Andrea Crawley, who is Commercial Director at Automatic Plastics based in Wicklow. And we have Patrick Buckley, Managing Director of EPS, who are headquartered in Cork, but have offices in Mayo, Laois and Kildare. So with that, I would first of all ask our first speaker, Nick, to put on his camera and his microphone. And Nick, I'm going to hand it over to you now to do your presentation and wish you the best luck. Thank you, Nick.
Great. Thank you so much, Aidan. Really appreciate it. And thank you for the opportunity to speak today. Just before I move on to the next slide, I just want to acknowledge the work and the climate action supports Enterprise Ireland have available for Irish business. I think we're all well aware that we all have a specific role to play in climate change. And I think business has a very significant role to play here. No matter how big or small you are as an organization, the time I think is most certainly now for action to take place. And these climate action funding supports can go a long way to really getting you started and that conversation started internally. So it's a great opportunity to avail of. Okay, next slide, please, Brian. Before I get into it, I just wanted to give you a bit of share a little bit more about business in the community Ireland, what we do, what we're about, for those of you that don't know. So we are the leading advisors on sustainability and CSR and contribute and coordinates a network of over 100 member companies. And these are ranging through all different sectors. We're a not-for-profit organization and see ourselves as the movement for sustainable change in business. We work with our members on all areas of sustainability, and maybe one of the key areas to call out here is our Business Working Responsibly mark, which is Ireland's leading independently audited standard for CSR and sustainability certification, and it's based on ISO 26000. So we have currently 40 of our member companies certified to this, and we're working with the others towards it. We work with our organizations on all areas of sustainability, as I said, and in these 3 specific areas, towards a low carbon economy, which I head up, and our low carbon pledge would play a significant role in that, and that's what we're going to be chatting about today. Inclusive societies, which is really that social inclusion piece, and we recently just launched our Elevate pledge that you might be aware of, supporting organizations and putting metrics and targets in line with social inclusion into their organizations. And our business action programs on education and employment really support this drive. And then the big part of our work is that sustainable business pillar, which really is around us supporting organizations develop, implement, and embed sustainable strategies into their organization. And we all know how important that is in this time that we're living in right now. So I think that gives you a good sense of who we are and how we work. Next slide there, please, Brian. So onto the Low Carbon Pledge. This is one of our strategic projects, and it really is how we support companies on their climate action journey. To date, we have 64 companies that have currently signed up to this, and we're hoping to get more and more on as we move forward. I think through our process of working with companies in this area over the last 5 or so years, we've had a lot of conversations with companies on all different levels of maturity when talking about their climate action journey, and learned a lot ourselves. So today, I just want to take this moment to share some of these insights with you and hopefully answer some of the questions you have with regards to the discussions and the journey that's taking place in your organization. So onto the commitment, what we've asked all companies to sign up to, and we've recently increased the ambition of this commitment, that was actually launched on the 24th of March this year, to ask all signatory companies to commit to setting a science-based carbon emission reduction target by 2024. So this is looking, because it's a science-based target, it's looking at your entire carbon footprint, so your scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions. And I'll go into a little bit of detail about that later on. But all of this obviously in line with the Paris Agreement and the latest IPCC findings. So effectively, this means that you're playing your role in limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees. I guess our ultimate goal is really to achieve carbon neutrality, and we see science-based targets as your short, medium-term targets towards halving your emissions by 2030, and then putting you on that trajectory to net zero by 2050 at the latest. And the pledge works in 2 specific ways, in my view. One, it's about BITC helping companies better understand what their emissions are and why setting science-based targets is so important. What's this going to mean for your organization moving forward? So we have discussions with senior leadership teams, various departments within the organization, to really get that message across to say, okay, by setting science-based targets, it's going to require innovation. It's going to require you to have cross-sectoral collaboration and different types of partnerships. Really looking for new, more efficient and effective ways to operate your business, moving towards that circular business model, where you're transforming your organization to really thrive in this low carbon future that we're working towards. And then the other key part is action. Like I said earlier, we're in a time where action has to take place. And we do that by providing platforms for collaboration and knowledge sharing. I think the best way to learn and develop your climate action roadmap and continuously work on it is through understanding what best practice looks like in different areas and learning from different organizations across different sectors, getting in touch with the right people and having these types of conversations. So we look to do that. Next slide there, please, Brian. Fantastic. So as I said earlier, like setting your science-based targets requires you to look at your whole carbon footprint. So this picture really puts it quite nicely, and it looks quite challenging and quite complex, and it is. It's very challenging, but we need to break it up. So look at your direct emissions, as you can see here, your scope 1 and your scope 2 emissions. These are fairly straightforward to be able to measure, understand what your carbon impact is, and you have the control to go and put the technical and operational measures in place to reach these targets. So every organization needs to really focus on their direct emissions. Where it becomes more challenging now is your scope 3 emissions, and this is really the emissions across your supply chain, upstream and downstream. And not all of these would be relevant to you, but it's looking at things such as purchased goods and services, your distribution of your raw materials, the distribution of your products, so looking downstream, business travel, employee commuting, waste, and a whole load more. So it's really trying to identify what's material to our organization and how we can start then really trying to access that data to understand where we are and how we want to move forward over here. So as you can see, quite complicated, especially when you're relying on different players within your supply chain to provide you some of this information. Next slide there, please, Brian. Fantastic. And footprinting can be highly complex. I'm going to say that a few times today because it is, and we know this at BITC. So what we did and what we launched at the end of, when was it? End of October last year, we launched a piece of research that we developed with our partners, Qantas, who's a carbon consulting agency out in mainland Europe, and We Mean Business, who's a global network for sustainability. And what we did with this was try to support your understanding and journey towards setting more ambitious and robust climate targets. So we worked with our pledge signatories at the time, asking them various questions around what were some of the specific challenges and barriers that they had to overcome and that they're still trying to overcome. And we came up with three detailed sections of this report, if you want to look at it that way. One was this lack of guidance that's available out there. And depending on the sector, there's more guidance that you're in, there's more guidance than others. But in general, there's just this lack of guidance about how to go about the process and how to actually set these targets. So this report really calls out some step-by-step actions that you can take to do this. The next big challenge area was data. Data can be highly challenging when you're looking at it from your Scope 3 perspective, down your supply chain, where you require your suppliers and various other stakeholders to supply you a level of accurate data. So this supply chain engagement was highly challenging, but very important in the process. So it calls out a few steps that you can take to be able to do this in this report. Then the big thing is your time, the resources that you have, and that leadership buy-in to really drive this agenda in the organization. And I think slowly but surely we're getting that leadership buy-in and we're seeing that, but it's again the expertise in-house to be able to drive this. So this report, it really just calls out some practical measures that you can take to overcome some of these challenges, and it's got sectoral guidelines at the back to really focus specifically on some of the challenges that your sector may have. So it's freely available, the link's there and will be provided to you. Utilize it for yourself as well as for your suppliers to just really get that education piece and knowledge piece about what this would mean for you. Next slide there, please, Brian. Measurement is key. You cannot manage what you do not measure. I think we've all heard that before. And the pledge is no different. We put a big emphasis on this, and as you can see here, when we ask companies to sign up to the pledge, we ask them to do two things. One is to report annually through our low carbon pledge reports that you can see here, and we've partnered with PwC to put this together over the last 3 years. This is our latest copy that we launched on the 10th of this month. Again, freely available, so feel free to access it. As well as communicate and report through your own channels. And I think this whole idea behind reporting is really growing in importance, and from a few areas. One is your stakeholders are demanding it from you, all your stakeholders. They want to see what your environmental and social impact is and prove where you're going and how you're going to get there. And I think the next important thing around reporting to realize is from a regulatory perspective. We are going to be required, if not already, to report on some of these non-financial indicators. So to be prepared for this, we need to start measuring and baselining where we're at and show that impact that we're making with the projects that we put in place. So this report really looks at doing exactly what it is, what it says. It's a baseline towards understanding what the commitment is, where we are progressing on the commitments that we've asked all our companies to sign up to. So where are they towards setting science-based targets? In doing this, we're asked a lot of really invaluable, important information from our companies, and some great insights we're able to have. So I'm going to take you through a couple of these now. Next slide there, please, Brian. So if first insight, it's why sign up to, it says low carbon pledge, but effectively why sign up to set science-based targets? What were some of the main drivers for you to do this? See there, one of the biggest one was business model resilience. And I don't think we can talk more about the word resilience in the future to come. The future is obviously very uncertain and unpredictable. We don't know what to expect around the impact of climate change, what it will have on our businesses. Like the global pandemic has challenged businesses and forced many to innovate, to rethink their business models in order to be able to survive and thrive in this new way. And the challenges to come from climate change will only intensify and require businesses to be able to adapt. And that resilience allows you to be able to adapt. So sustainability and embedding this type of thinking into your business strategies is going to be key to providing this resilience in the future. The next important topic there was reputation, and we've spoken a little bit about this already. we're being bombarded from all angles to show and prove our environmental and social impacts. And if we can't show this level of positive impact expected of us, this will have significant effects on our reputation. And in the current times we live in, we know how important and how key our reputation is towards getting new work, retaining the work that we have, that war on talent that everyone's talking about, and retention of your staff. And we can go on a little longer on that, but there's a lot riding on this. So I think there's a lot of key measures here, and you can see that from the slide, of why it's so important to be able to set these really ambitious targets. Next slide there, please, Brian. This next slide really talks about the crux of what we're asked all our companies to really commit to, setting a science-based target. And out of the 64 companies, as I said, all different sectors, you can see that they're all on very, very different journeys and different levels of maturity when understanding what their emissions are. You've got 30% there that have already set their science-based targets and got those approved. And then you've got 25% right at the bottom that are only really just asking the question of what this is going to mean to me, and starting that baseline process of understanding what our emissions are. And I guess what the pledge is trying to do is it's saying that we need to bring everyone on this journey with us. We need to ensure that we are moving as quickly as we possibly can and learn from each other. So again, it's your journey, and it will always be something that needs to, what's the word I'm looking for, relate to your business and where you're going and your vision. Next slide there, please, Brian. So obviously through our work over the last 4 years, we've had a lot of conversations with companies, and a lot of it's come down to, and what we've come across are some of these typical pitfalls that we see companies falling into when trying to understand and progress their climate journey going forward. And I just want to share these with you because I think they're really, really important. The first one is this unrealistic expectations that we have. And it's so crucial to manage these expectations both internally and externally. We're not going to change everything tomorrow. And the one way to really do this is it's transparency. Transparency is key from the very, very start. What it is you're trying to achieve and how you're going to achieve it. And being very transparent on an annual basis in your process and the progress that you're making. And I think it's also to remember that the first time that you're going through this process of understanding what your emissions are and setting that baseline is always going to be the most difficult, and you're going to be able to work on it from there onwards. The second is this false sense of precision that we need. Oh, we need to know everything before we can act. I think what matters is that you get started and take action where it does matter. So detailed numbers will follow. We'll better understand what our emissions are, where they are, but it's about that action piece of where we know we can have that impact. So it's identifying within your sector, when you're looking at your scope 3 emissions, what's my most material areas? What can I do in the meantime while I'm working on my data to actually improve my efficiency? And it's about setting good targets, good ambitious targets. We might not have all the answers right now, but that's going to force us into innovation and a different type of thinking. And start that supplier engagement. That I cannot stress more about. That's going to take time to be able to evolve and improve the type of dialogue that you're having with your suppliers, but you've got to start somewhere. So creating those effective channels for communication is vital. And then this last one is the need for instant results. As I said, it's not going to happen overnight. This is going to take time. It's going to take you 2-3 years to get a robust baseline of your scope 3 emissions. But it's that step-by-step process of improve, refine when you're looking at your data collection, how you engage with your suppliers, and what you dive deep in. So it's just having this in your minds that, okay, whatever we're doing now, we can learn from it and we can progress that into the next phase. Next slide there, Brian. I think this is my last slide. I'm going to fly through this one. Key takeaways. You always got to have your key takeaways at the end of a session. Don't overlook your scope 1 and 2 emissions, no matter how small they are in your bigger carbon footprint. You have direct control over this. You can put the technical and the operational measures in place to achieve really ambitious targets. Get started on scope 3, but be patient. It will take time. Manage your expectations internally and externally. Transparency is always going to be your best friend here. And then act on scope 3 material emissions without having precise numbers. You're not going to have precise numbers at the beginning, but we still need to act and reduce where we can. And then it's starting that process of engaging with your suppliers, which is just so vital for creating those effective communication measures or channels with your suppliers. Last slide there, Brian. That is me done. I've included my email address here. Any of the information and the links that I've put up on the site are freely accessible documents. So I hope they support you in your climate action journey to follow. And if you have any questions for me, happy to take them.
That's great, Nick. Listen, thank you very much for the presentation. There's some fantastic insights into that. I might just ask you to turn your microphone off. That's brilliant. Just to remind everybody that's on the webinar that has joined us this morning that we have the option to ask both Nick and our panelists, and indeed my colleague Kathleen, who's going to also present our details on our green supports questions. Feel free to type those questions into the chat box here provided on the right hand side. If you have any questions, now's the time and opportunity for you to ask those questions. Again, Nick, that was great. Some really interesting insights, and it kind of points to the fact that, you know, there's a lot of companies out there, even the big companies that you referenced at the start, that are still unsure as to how to navigate this particular challenge for their business. But there is support there. They're not alone, and you're kind of identifying some of the key business drivers as well. With that in mind, I'd like to ask my panelists, who will go to the next part of the webinar. As I mentioned, we have Patrick Bosang from Passive Sills, we have Andrea Crawley from Automatic Plastics, and we have Patrick Buckley from EPS Group, who are going to join us and give us their insights as to the contribution of our supports to help them with their sustainability. And we'll have some other questions in terms of how they have gone about introducing such measures in their business. So I think I'm just there. There's Patrick now. Folks, maybe I'll start with you, Patrick Buckley, if you don't mind. If you want to give us just a 2-minute overview of your business, who you are, why sustainability matters, and we'll ask each of our participants to give a quick overview. Thanks, Patrick.
Thanks, Aidan. Good morning, everyone. Delighted to be with you. I suppose EPS, we're a 52-year-old business now. We're involved in water and wastewater treatment and solutions across Ireland, across the UK, and some projects in Northern Europe and global projects as well. We're involved in everything from construction, asset management, service repair and maintenance, and the supply of products, various products for homes, businesses, farms, you know, industries, etc. So effectively anywhere where water or wastewater is being pumped or treated or abstracted, or wastewater is being treated before it's returned back to the environment, we're involved in some shape or form. So sustainability for us has always been something in the business from the very start, because we were involved in that water space. In earnest, it really started for us back in, you know, 2000, the early 2003 or 4, with support from Enterprise Ireland around lean and continuous improvement, you know, and that kind of got us looking at ways of improving our business. But for us, I think sustainability, and today I think the big ethos is around carbon and carbon neutrality and the various initiatives and targets and commitments that are there for countries, and then for businesses and communities and state agencies. But it's much wider for us in EPS in terms of sustainability. You have that environment bit, which is very important, but it's also about our people, the communities where we're based, the communities where we develop projects, and the impact we have in those areas when we're present there. It's also about our brand, you know, building social capital, so that when we have an off day or a poor experience, that we have that social capital that we can rely on to get us through difficult periods. And it's also balancing stakeholders. You know, we've got shareholders, we've got all of our employees, you know, the public that we work with, and managing those in a way that allows us obviously to be a profitable business, but also to do that in an ethical way, and obviously doing it safely so no one gets injured or hurt or harmed, and that we don't do any damage to the environment. You know, the biggest thing for us, I suppose, is getting on the journey, and thankfully around 2000 we started it through supports from Enterprise Ireland and others, in Sustainable Energy Authority of Ireland, and that got us going.
That's great, Patrick, and we might come back to that in a little bit, in a little later, just to delve into that a little bit in more detail. Andrea, I might ask you to introduce yourself, the company, and again, the focus on sustainability and why it's important for Automatic Plastics.
Yeah, thanks, Aidan. So I'm Andrea Cawley, the Commercial Director at Automatic Plastics. We're an injection moulder based in Wicklow, and we supply mainly to pharma, medtech and food packaging. Similar to Patrick, we started with Enterprise Ireland on our lean journey. And as we looked to become more lean and more efficient and more profitable at the end of the day, we realized that energy costs were one of our really big costs. And also we had a commitment and a desire to kind of have sustainability and energy efficiency as a key part of what we do. So we started with a Green Start, and it was just fantastic because we put a green lean team together from across the organisation, and it just meant that that team were supported. The consultant that we chose came in and helped us do a register of opportunities. Those opportunities were kind of low-hanging fruit that we had in the business. Some of them were very technical and maybe very specific to our business. But then some of it was around creating awareness within the organisation and driving that kind of sustainability awareness across the organisation. So we ended up kind of focusing on, you know, stores and packaging, not just, you know, some of the technical things. You know, we got some big wins. Doing the Green Start also helped us create those metrics. And have a metric to be monitoring our progress and measuring our progress. So certainly for us as an SME, we employ 130 people in Wicklow, and you know it's always challenging to find time to do these things because there's other demands in the organisation. But it really did help drive down our costs, and also I suppose be able to present ourselves to our clients, who are big kind of global pharma and medtech clients, that we have a commitment to energy and sustainability. So it was just a win on all fronts for us, not without its challenges, but definitely worth doing. So my advice is just jump in.
Great, Andrea, and we might come back to that in a little bit moment. I'm particularly interested in terms of, you know, the customer focus as well and how important it is to present that to them. But I'll come back to that in a moment, Andrea. Patrick Bosang from Passive Sales, I'd love to hear a little bit more about your company and why you guys are focused on being more sustainable.
Yes, good morning. I suppose, unlike the other companies, we're probably a newer company and pretty much involved with EI from the very get-go. Our journey started, we were on the New Frontiers program, which is supported by EI, and we went on to become a HPSU from there. Our company, we manufacture lightweight, thermally efficient construction products. Our original offering was a windowsill. For many years, engineers and architects were struggling with how to get sufficient insulation around the windowsill area. This was an area of huge heat loss in energy efficient building, leading to mold, condensation and damp growth in housing. And I thought this was quite simple. I came up with an idea, well, what we made a windowsill from insulation. So we create windowsills from a very high density polystyrene and coat them with a stone resin. That's what our product originally started with, and then it moved on to other thermal breaks and even decorative molding. So to date, we've managed to secure projects like the new extension to the K Club. We managed to copy all the original moldings on the original building and reproduce all of those. So that was a huge project that we got in the very early days. We've gone on to do molded projects like the new Cafe and Sin, the whole refurb of the streetscape in the back of that, and we have several schemes of houses around the country. So our products are growing. The grant for us, and we got help with our environmental product declaration. So in construction, everything is moving towards aerated housing, but what we build our products or what we build our houses with is the embodied carbon in the construction. So what we were able to get our EPD done, so it was an environmental product declaration, So now with any of our products, we have like a carbon score with our products, and what that allowed us to, we had to go through and audit pretty much every aspect of what comes in, what goes out, and it gave us a great understanding of what products we're using, and it even gave us a good sales line. Like, we sell window sills made from polystyrene. It's one of our primary business, our primary activities, and people say, I wouldn't use that, it's a plastic based, but guess what? Our plastic based window sills have half the embodied carbon that a concrete window sill has. So it has been a fantastic journey for us so far, and that was, the whole Green Start program really helped us along that path.
So can I ask Patrick then, if you're developing new products for the business going forward, would that be something that you would embed within that product development? Is that kind of product lifestyle assessment?
Yes, yes. So we can, like, we just gathered that we've most of the data gathered now. So the impact of our raw materials, how much energy, and we can add any new product coming on board, and that's going to become like it's easy for us to add new products onto we have the system in place to do it now.
And you use the Green Start to bring in some expertise to help you with that.
Yes,
beneficial.
Yes. So we brought in consultants to bring us through the entire process. Really, I wouldn't have had a clue where to start. And Peter Seymour was our consultant, and he just brought us from start to finish, and pretty well told us what we needed to do, and sat down, came to the factory twice, 3 times, liaised with us, sat with some of the guys doing the different operations, and just helped us to collate whatever information we got together to get together.
Brilliant, thank you. Andrea, I might just go back to you. You mentioned, you guys with the Green Start on an environmental management systems project. What kind of opportunities were identified in that? You mentioned there was opportunities to I guess save some money and also reduce your carbon footprint. Can you give us a little bit more detail on those, Andrea?
So basically, by doing the Green Start, we were able to bring in a consultant who had actually worked in other injection molding factories, so kind of was very experienced in the area, and they helped us create this register of opportunities. So they helped us, first of all, identify our biggest energy users, which we knew a lot, but it's fantastic when you can fast track that by bringing in an expert, because obviously we know, we have 28 injection molding machines, we know the tonnage, but actually the guys were able to kind of help us track the energy on each of those machines. So they created this list, and I mean, what I would say with energy savings, some of it needs investment, but by having this very kind of structured approach, it allows you as a company plan your investments. And I would echo what some of the other speakers said. So for us, it was things like making some investments on the air compression, for example. But we could actually quantify, okay, we're going to save this, and we'll have it paid back in 3 years. So we did all our LED lighting. We did, as I say, variable compressors instead of another type. I'm not technical, so I can't even remember the term. But they helped us create that register and say, right, what are we going to chase in year 1? What are we going to chase in year 2? And have some good targets and good actions. The other thing I would say as well is we did reach out to our energy providers, and they were actually really helpful too. So for example, we were with Energy at the time, and they came in and they did a kind of an awareness day with us, where they had staff jump up on a bicycle to actually have to pedal to generate energy, to show how hard it is to generate energy. And it became a bit of a kind of a fun day, but also an awareness day, where we were able to say, look, our energy costs are our 3rd biggest cost in the business. By all of us being more energy aware, whether that was small things like putting sensors in low traffic areas, up to, as I say, making these capital investments in our lighting or in our energy system. So yeah, they just helped us be very structured. They helped us create the register of opportunities, and it was like a massive jump in our knowledge. We had, we have a good We have a great maintenance team in APL who are very knowledgeable, but bringing in an expert via the Enterprise Ireland support just definitely fast-tracked that for us.
And did you have a dedicated team or person kind of managing the process with the consultant internally as well, Andrea?
Yeah, so we had we call it the green lean team, because we had our lean team who were driving kind of general efficiencies and lean operational excellence. But we asked for volunteers for a green lean team. And what was amazing about that, for example, so we run 3 shifts and we run 24/5. And you know, we had a guy on nights who was like, I've been wanting to do this for ages. Can I be part of this team? His name is Martin. He's an operator. But you know what Martin was able to do, for example, we brought in a checklist where on each shift somebody would check that anything that could be off was off. So again, in our world, injection molding machines, you need to switch them off. And again, not my area of expertise, but it was that Martin would be the person on his shift who would go around and make sure that all conveyors, injection molding machines, everything that could be switched off was switched off. And he was delighted to be involved. It was an area of interest for him. So that's how we did it. So we always kind of ask for volunteers. But yeah, the Green Lean team have, you know, they've been going for 4 years now, and we're still going.
Brilliant, that's great, Andrea. I might come back to maybe just to you in a moment or so. I want to go to Patrick Buckley. Patrick, you took on one of our larger supports, the Green Plus, to develop, I think, and implement an energy management system. You know, similar to Andrea, you had did you have enthusiasm or did you have resistance internally? And I noticed as well you operate over multiple sites. Was that quite a big challenge to undertake such a I guess a program over multiple sites? Perhaps you can share some insights on that.
Yeah, it certainly was a challenge, but I think we take it a little bit for granted in EPS now, because we've been, you know, involved in standards, in particular with ISO standards across a whole range of areas for probably 20 years now. 9001 would have been our first one. So and even at that stage at the start, we would have brought in external consultants, and they wouldn't have had company management support. It would have been, we need to get this standard. Person comes in, has all the expertise, but doesn't get buy-in within the business, didn't have management support. It was kind of over there. And some of those guys would have come and gone. And then when I suppose we were pulled by some of our customers and clients, we had to step up, get serious about it, and then actually start implementing standards. So we went from 9,000 to 14 to 18 to 50,000. Then in 2010, we started capturing and measuring our carbon. So scope 1 and 2 initially, and then scope 3 after about 2 or 3 years. We independently validated through an entity called CMARS. So we've been doing that now since 2010. So it's the culture of standards has just developed within the business. We have people that work full time on it. And then it's no different than lean. You start with a small group of people, and you kind of, it just winds and winds out, and you just pull in more and more people across the business. Today, it's just fully accepted. Like we've just come through 35 days of audits for our various standards, because they're now all integrated. So we would have had 3 people full-time, maybe 10 or 12 people supporting on the fringes. And that's 35 days of audits just finished last week, at where we've got to with our standards, all done in-house. And then we get 1 or 2 specialist companies to help us with it. But it's an essential part in with our energy management plan, support from Enterprise Ireland, local enterprise offices and other agencies, to bring in that external resource when you need it for specialist parts of that process. But our energy management system is there, it's in place, and it's a key part. No different to Andrea. We have our hit list now of projects and initiatives. We can see what we need to do over the next 2 to 3 years in terms of investments across the business to reduce power, reduce gas consumption. You know, we've just moved to investing in EVs in our fleet this year, anaerobic digestion on some of our sites. In one sense, we consume a lot of energy because we manage assets on behalf of our customers. So Irish Water and some industrial customers. So we pay for the electricity, we pay for the gas, we pay for the chemicals, and these are all huge carbon consumers. So there's a big impetus there to reduce that as best we can. And again, no different to Andrea, we get great support from our energy providers, who we've had a number of them over the years, who come on board and support us on that, as well as Sustainable Energy Authority of Ireland as well.
So people listening in sometimes, Patrick, when they hear audits and the time invested in audits and standards, they might shy away from that. But there's obviously a clear business benefit from it, Patrick, in terms of how it helps win business, helps it positions yourself. Yeah. And maybe you could talk a little bit about that, how it differentiates yourselves.
We have no choice. I suppose we had we were just starting in the English market in 2009, and one of our biggest customer today approached us, and they were started then looking at their scope 3. So they were having a conversation with their supply chain, and they basically told us, if you're not measuring and independently verifying your carbon in 3 to 4 years, you won't be working for us. That was in 2010 or 2009. So that started it. Look, the analogy I give to people is it's like a peloton. And look, the Tour de France is on this week. It's like the peloton. You need to make a decision to buy a bike. Depending on how much you want to invest, you can get different types of bike, different teams, but you need to get into the bunch. You don't have to be out front, but you need to be in there. And in time, you can start to go to the front. And maybe if you want to go and conquer the hill before everyone else and go out really out front, you can. But you must get into that bunch and get started. There's loads of supports there through the local enterprise offices, through Enterprise Ireland, to get you started. The most recent ones there, you know, where the consultants come in for a few days and basically do an assessment and scope it out for you. That's the place to start if you haven't started. If you have started and you have a plan and you have the bones of a team within your business that are interested and focused on it, maybe look at trying to accelerate the pace a little bit more. If you're going at a certain pace, just pick it up a little bit.
Great. Patrick, I might come back to you in the Q&A session as well. Patrick Bosang, just before we wrap this session up, similar to Patrick Buckley, having the environmental product declarations is probably a key component to winning business in the sector. Do you think like you wouldn't be winning business unless you had that kind of embedded in your product, in your USPs?
It's not as much of an issue at the moment, but it's something that is coming in hugely. So we're all aware of the BER scale in the house. You have an A1, A2, and so on and so forth. However, going forward, there will also be a carbon score in your house. So like if your house was built of mud and hemp and things like that, and, if it was locally sourced, you'd possibly be getting an A++ rating. Where if you built your energy efficient house that uses very little energy to heat it and it had 4-foot thick concrete walls, you would be getting a very poor rating. So I suppose we're probably ahead of we're only the 4th or 5th, maybe the 10th company in Ireland, in construction products to get our product declaration, and probably one of the smaller companies to get it. So it will give dividend. Some of the companies aren't, that you're dealing with, we deal with a lot of builders are not even aware of it yet. But when you're talking to the more progressive ones, yeah, this is, and some of the more progressive firms. There's only one firm of architects in Ireland who actually ask people for their APD, but no doubt that is going to change. So if we don't have it, we won't be in the races, and it is very good to be leading, showing, well, look, we are leading the way. This is a better way of doing things, and we are a better company for doing this. So
great. Okay, thanks for that. And listen, I'm going to wrap the panel discussion up now, but I know there's lots of questions coming in. We'll ask you to come back in a few moments. So again, just want on behalf of everybody, want to thank our panelists for those contributions. We're not completely finished with you. We're going to ask you to come back in the Q&A session at the end. At this stage, I'll ask you to turn off your cameras and microphones, and I'm going to ask my colleague, Kathleen O'Regan, who heads up our environmental offers in Enterprise Ireland, to take us through our green supports in Enterprise Ireland. A lot of them were referenced just now by our panel members, and we have a new support that Kathleen is going to also mention as well. So Kathleen, over to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Aidan, and good morning, everyone. So I'm going to give an overview of the Climate Action Funding supports. And the objectives of the supports are to help companies prepare for the low carbon, more resource efficient economy of the future, whether a company is starting out on their green journey or have already started, so to help accelerate that journey, as was mentioned before. So there are three main supports: the Climate Action Voucher, Green Start and Green Plus. So firstly, the Climate Action Voucher. The Climate Action Voucher is a 100% funded grant to engage an expert from the Enterprise Ireland Directory of Green Service Providers for 2 days. The Green Service Providers Directory can be downloaded from the Enterprise Ireland website. The project cost is €1,800, which equates to €900 per day. And the voucher is open to eligible Enterprise Ireland and Udaros client companies. Local Enterprise Office client companies with up to 10 employees can apply for a similar support called Green for Micro through their local Enterprise Office. Eligible projects under the Climate Action Voucher must include one of the following activities: resource efficiency assessment, renewable energy potential, introduction to corporate sustainability, or introduction to circular economy. Under resource efficiency assessment, resources can include energy, water and raw materials, and examples of energy include energy used for heating, lighting, operating equipment, refrigeration and transport. The Green Service Provider will identify resource emissions and cost savings opportunities and will provide information on cost and payback of those opportunities identified. So opportunities will include capital projects. So for example, to upgrade lighting to LED lighting, install rainwater harvesting, replace old motors, fix air compressor leaks, or reduce waste to landfill. Opportunities may be a mix of short and long-term opportunities and may vary from low or no cost to high cost opportunities and can include feasibility studies, procedural and process changes and staff training. It's important to note, however, that energy audits by large companies required to carry out an energy audit under the Energy Efficiency Directive are not eligible. The second option under the Climate Action Voucher is a renewable energy potential. So the service provider will assess the business and site's energy usage and recommend the most appropriate renewable energy systems for the business. All renewable energy technologies can be considered, including solar panels, wind turbines, heat pumps and biomass boilers. Similar to resource efficiency assessment, the service provider will identify resource emissions and cost savings opportunities and will provide information on the costs and the payback of opportunities identified. So for example, the installation of solar panels. The third option under the Climate Action Voucher is an introduction to corporate sustainability. The service provider will review the company's current performance, activities and initiatives and provide advice on developing a policy and an initial action plan. And lastly then, introduction to circular economy, which means looking beyond the current take, make, waste linear economic model to a circular model that minimises waste and pollution by design and keeping products and materials in use and regenerating natural systems. So the service provider will help prepare a plan to identify and develop circular economy ideas for a more circular product, process or service. So more information on the application and claims process and the eligible activities can be found in the Climate Action Voucher webpage and the Climate Action Voucher assignment guidelines. As part of the application, you will need to supply resource usage information, such as you have them prior to your engagement, and this will give the service provider information to work with before commencing the project and will ensure you get the most out of your 2-day engagement. The application is designed to be easy to complete and has an expected turnaround and approval of a number of days. A project report is required when the project is finished and a report template is provided. It is expected that this assignment will be carried out within 6 weeks and that the outcomes will lead to further training or technical feasibility or innovation or capital projects so that it will start companies on a journey of activities. The second support is Green Start. Green Start project cost is €6,300 and the eligible cost element is the Green Service Provider fee, which is 7 days at €900 per day. The grant is 80%, which equates to €5,000, so the company pays €1,300. And the assignment period is generally over 3 to 6 months. Green Start is available to eligible Enterprise Ireland, Udaros, IDA and local Enterprise Office client companies. Companies can choose a service provider from the Directory of Green Service Providers. However, this is optional. Companies may select a service provider who is not on the directory and will be approved as part of the application process. Applications are generally approved in 3 to 4 weeks. A project report is required upon project completion and a report template is provided. Under Green Start, companies can implement a basic management system based on Plan, Do, Check, Act, such as an environmental management system or an energy or carbon management system, or water stewardship. Or a company can carry out a short-term project on a range of different activities, from carbon footprinting to life cycle assessment to sustainable packaging to sustainable logistics. A number of manufacturing companies have already availed of Green Start, and for example, Castle Group Modular in Galway, who manufacture bespoke modular units, used Green Start to develop a basic environmental management system, and they identified a 56% reduction in energy usage through the installation of LED lights. And the project also helped divert tile waste from landfill. So instead of going to landfill, the waste tile materials will be crushed and screened and used as secondary aggregates for concrete projects. Elite Form Manufacturing, Conor Bright Plastics and Ballytherm also used Green Start to implement a basic environmental management system with a focus on energy. And Patrick from Passive Sills gave the example this morning how Passive Sills used Green Start to carry out a life cycle assessment of their products, which in turn had generated this environmental product declaration. And Andrea from Automatic Plastics explained how they use Green Start as well to implement an environmental management system with an energy focus. So taking things to the next level is Green Plus. The Green Plus project cost is up to €100,000 and the grant is up to 50%. The eligible cost elements include the green service provider fee, which is up to €900 per day, up to 10 project team member salary costs, and salary costs of up to €200 per day can be supported, and training course fees for specialised external courses that support the project goals. The assignment period is generally over 6 to 12 months, and Green Plus is available to eligible Enterprise Ireland, UDEROS and IDA client companies. Similar to Green Start, the Directory of Green Service Providers is optional, and applications are generally approved in 3 to 4 weeks. Eligible projects include training the company's green team to align to internationally recognised standards, such as ISO 14001, which is an environmental management standard, ISO 50001, an energy management standard, or the Alliance for Water Stewardship, AWS, and frameworks of disclosure platforms, for example, Science Based Targets Initiative, SME Client Hub, CDP, formerly known as the Carbon Disclosure Project, TCFD, which is a task force on climate-related financial disclosures. And companies can also avail of Green Plus to help them develop their long-term sustainability plans. So examples of companies that have availed of Green Plus include Steel Form Sections to align to BES 6001, Woodfab Timber, Aqua Design and Burnside Autosoil availed of Green Plus to align to ISO 14001. And Patrick from EPS has outlined how EPS availed of Green Plus to implement ISO 50001 across their sites. So for more information on the 3 supports, go to globalambition.ie/climate action. You will see assignment guidelines for each support, the Climate Action Voucher, Green Start and Green Plus, and the guidelines outline the application and claims process and the eligible activities in more detail. We strongly encourage you to talk to your DA to understand how the green supports can help you or your company on its green journey. And supports are there to help you get external expertise to build in-house capabilities. Green credentials are becoming more and more important for all stakeholders, from consumers to supply chains to banks, investors, regulators, and to employees. So I'll hand it back over to you, Aidan.
Thank you very much, Kathleen. That's great, and a great summary of all our supports. As Kathleen mentioned, feel free to reach out to your development advisor to learn more, or look at our website and contact us directly for advice. With that, I'm going to ask all our panel members and Nick to turn on their cameras, and we'll move into the Q&A session as well. We've had a number of great questions coming in on the chat there, and I might go back to Nick initially. And Nick, we have a question. We'll spend the next 5 minutes. I know we're almost out of time, but we'll spend the next 5 minutes going through some questions. Nick, I have a question for you as to question came in from Ian Keogh. He asked, how far do you go in evaluating a company's footprint, a carbon footprint? Are you also including their product design as well as their operations?
Meaning BITC specifically, or how far you should go as an organization? From a BITC perspective, we would not necessarily go out and support a company in, especially from a scope 3 perspective, in understanding what and how to measure those specific aspects. However, from a scope 1 2 perspective and some of those more manageable Scope 3 perspectives, we would be able to go in and really support a company in getting that basics. These are our direct emissions. This is how we can start calculating the type of data we need, putting the conversion to it towards carbon, and then putting a plan in place to actually go about reducing the emissions. And I think it just goes back to like how important measurement is, because a lot of the speakers spoke about all the actions that they're doing. But when you have that detailed action plan or detailed measurement of this is where my emissions are, now we can start making real strategic investment choices about where can we make our biggest environmental impact. But from a Scope 3 perspective, we at BITC wouldn't have the technical knowledge to go in and the resources to go in and support the company from that perspective.
Well, it brings to me to the question, which is how do you pick the right consultant? And I suppose maybe Kathleen, you can talk on this. It maybe is to Nick's point. It's that technical expertise and knowledge, and maybe some of the other panel members might have some insights there in that. Kathleen, do you want to talk just about the range of the breadth of experience on the consultant panel?
Yeah, so on our directory of green service providers, there's over 60 consultants on the directory at the moment, and it is growing since we've launched this Climate Action Fund. And the range of expertise, we've maybe 20 different functional experiences. So if you're looking for a consultant, you'll be able to filter for if, for example, you wanted to focus on energy management or life cycle assessment or sustainable logistics or green procurement or corporate sustainable strategy, you can actually do a filter on the directory and match up with the expertise that you're looking for. And in relation to sustainable strategy, companies or consultants are there to help you, whether it's aligned to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, to SME Climate Hub, to, as I mentioned, the Task Force on Climate-related Financial Disclosures, and the Science Based Targets Initiative. So there's a range of external expertise there to help you, depending on what you want to focus on.
I have a question for Patrick Buckley, come in from the audience. Patrick, you mentioned EVs changing some of your fleet to electric vehicles. What about vans? Are you looking at vans as well, or what kind of technologies are maybe there for larger vehicles?
Yeah, we've looked at a variety of technologies there, and we have looked at vans, and the 2 that we added this year are actually vans. They're smaller vans. We would have over 200 vehicles in our fleet. So we've started with 2. It's from my view, it's probably 6 or 7 years too late in what I would like to have done, but we've started, and we'll see how we go with those and trial them and move from there. But like it's just, that's only one part of it. Obviously, there's a lot more to do. But just on the consultant one, I think what's very important for the companies is when you're going out looking for someone to come in, you need to be clear, are you bringing someone in to do the work for you? Are you bringing someone in to help you do the work? Because where it falls down a lot with companies is they bring in an outside consultant and they expect the consultant to do everything for them. And then when it's not happening, they say, well, I tried that and it didn't work. People need to be clear on what they're bringing in. So if you want someone to come in and do it all for you, that's a different approach. The better way is to actually have people identified within your business that will actually do the heavy lifting and get someone to come and guide them and help them and bring them along the way.
It's a great point, Patrick, and I see Nick's nodding along to that. Andrea, there was a question come in for you in terms of, with your particular project looking at energy savings, where was the greatest saving achieved in that particular project, and are you continuously setting targets now for new savings going forward?
So what we did is we set ourselves, I'll be honest, a slightly random target of saving 10% of our energy costs. So what we did, again, helped by the consultant that we got and the SEAI actually as well. So we had to define a kind of a measurement metric that was helpful for us. Our business is growing, so our sales are growing significantly. So we knew obviously our energy would increase. So what we did is we found a way to create a metric that is our kilowatt per kilo of plastic converted. And that was then a very, very transparent metric for us to measure ourselves against. So even if our actual bills were getting higher, we knew that we were being more efficient because we were getting more output for the same energy. So that is a metric that we look at monthly. And the trend, we can see the trend, and the trend bar is just like really nicely going down. Again, when we have occasional spikes, which we do, we put in a new HVAC system in December. What was really good is to see the spike that created, to kind of look at the efficiencies around that HVAC system. It drove us to understand that you know, we needed to look maybe at the settings or the output levels on that. So that's the metric that we use, and we have seen, you know, steady gains with a downward curve, which is what we want. And we have that information displayed in our gowning up room. So, you know, our staff have to gown up to go into our production area, and it's there for everybody to see, so that everybody knows we're driving energy. We have our green lean team. Any ideas are welcome. So to me, it's the technical the technical and the awareness. And I would agree with some of the other panels that, you know, just bringing in a consultant to do things doesn't work. You need it to stick. You know, you need those behaviors to stick, and you need it to be driven from within, but the external expertise helps you fast track it.
Andrea, that's brilliant. Listen, I'm just conscious of time, and I know we wanted to finish within the hour, but I'm going to leave the last word to Patrick Bosang. Patrick, you mentioned that you looked at this at a very early stage in the company development, and so it's not just for the big companies, but for companies of all size. Do you have any particular advice to any SME that's tuned in here this morning as to what they should do if they're considering being more sustainable, going on this journey to reduce their carbon footprint?
Yeah, well, I suppose we started with the green start, right? But having done that, it made us somewhat aware of, you know, where we are losing and where we're poor in our energy consumption. And one of the things I'm going to go back on now, and it's actually go for the climate voucher and get consulted in with this. That's one thing we didn't do, and it's probably somewhere that we should have started. Now, look, we started in a great place, but when we moved in, the building that we were in was the old Kodak building, and one of the first things we done automatically was change dollar lights to LED, because on the factory floor, I think it was going to cost about €2.50 just at the main floor section an hour to keep the lights turned on. So by just switching over to LED, you know, brought it down to 35 to 40 cents or something ridiculous like that. But no, that was just my own initiative. But I suppose, I think the climate action voucher is probably a fantastic place to start, and that's one of the things I'm going to start with and taking on it. And it really opened up to us, you know, in business you're kind of busy. You're busy being busy in a lot of cases, and yes, helping, you know, making changes to help the environment and all that. You know, yeah, it's regulation, it's things like that, but it will actually benefit you. You know, most of these things will make us more lean. Like the whole lean manufacturing is eliminating, you know, waste, and you know, in every way. And we have machines that are running, and you have equipment that's going, and there's waste everywhere. You know, so if we could just get it down, you get rid of the waste, and that would be good for the environment as well as everything else. So I think a good start I would advise anyone is probably go out with the climate action voucher as just the first one, and it'll be open the door for you. You know, we walk past inefficient light bulbs every day. We walk past, you know, machines that are turned on, and you know, if you ask yourself the question, or somebody asks you the question, why is that on? You can say, well, I don't know. It's always on. So maybe just good to get an awareness to start with. So that would be probably
excellent. Well, listen, Patrick, that's a great way to finish, and it's a great point to wrap up. Just make a start and focus on the voucher, and I think you know, it means getting more efficient overall and becoming a better business overall if you take that sustainable approach. So listen, I want to thank everybody on the panel: Nick, our keynote speaker, Andrea, Patrick Buckley, Patrick Bosang, Nick Reynolds, and Kathleen O'Regan, my colleague, and all the people that tuned in today to listen to our webinar. This was the second webinar highlighting our climate action funding supports for our clients. We're going to have a third one for business ICT companies early next month on the 13th of July. And again, if anybody has any questions, please visit our website, Global Ambition /Climate Action. I want to thank the team behind the scenes, behind the cameras, Brian and Lisa, for all their support in hosting the event and supporting us on it. And again, if any client is out there and they want to learn more, feel free to reach out to us through their development advisors, and we'd be glad to help. Thank you very much for your time this morning, and we look forward to you, and good luck with your sustainable journeys. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.